Well, folks, we still got a bunch more questions to go on the earlier version. We had a mountain of popcorn about this big and we got rid of most of it. Now here's the remaining questions that we're going to take care of today. Appreciate you being here. Hopefully the last one was worth your time, but I can guarantee you this one will be worth your time. I'm not sure how people come up with their Instagram handles. FVA2CS. Randy, are you going to hunt with a muzzleloader in Montana? Nope. Is the muzzleloader season worth it for us residents? It might be. The reason I don't do it with a muzzleloader is a couple things. One, you have to look at the restrictions on muzzleloaders. I don't have a muzzleloader that meets those restrictions. You know, a lot of people show up here with their muzzleloader and they're like, oh boy, I'm gonna shoot one at 400 yards. You better read the rules under our Montana muzzleloader restrictions. Two, the specific muzzleloader season happens in December. And just me personally, I think we're putting enough pressure on the deer and elk the rest of the year that I just don't want to push them any further or pressure them any harder. So I won't be doing it. But if others do, you know, knock yourself out. So Ron says, is there any way to make hunting licenses a tax deductible expense? No, not that I'm aware of, unless you're, you know, in some business related to hunting where it's a necessary business expense in order to generate revenue. The IRS, as a general rule, says expenses incurred for the generation of your revenue are deductible. For most people, they're not generating any revenue from it. The same question I have for the small amount of hunting and fishing gear that we all have. Sorry, Ron, unless you're in some business that generates revenue from hunting or fishing, as you asked, the answer is usually no. Ben says, I'll be going on my first deer hunt here in Kansas this coming season. Do you have any tips or advice for a first-time Kansas hunter? Not really. I've hunted Kansas 3 times. Cool place. If you have access to private, it's going to help you a lot. You're going to be hunting mostly whitetails, I'm assuming, unless you're in western Kansas. Have fun. That's my biggest piece of advice for a new hunter. Have fun. And if there's one tactical thing, don't let the wind screw you up. Pay super, super close attention to the wind in all situations, and you'll have success. So Todd says, I want to do an antelope hunt in Wyoming in 2023 or 2024 on public land. Is it beneficial to apply for a preference point this year, or will I not need to do that? Yes, you will need to do that. In my lifetime, just in the last 15 years, 17 years, Wyoming has cut their pronghorn tags from over 70,000 to now under 40,000. That's a huge cut in the number of pronghorn tags. Why? Because pronghorn numbers are going down for whatever reason. People can say, oh, it's hard winters. I think a lot of it is habitat. It's habitat related to competition with, you know, wild horses, invasive plant species, fire suppression. There's a whole bunch of things that are going on that are hurting Wyoming's pronghorn population, just like it is in Arizona, like it is in most other states. Having a point, every point is going to help you get a little bit further down that path if you want to go do it. So the good old days of being able to get a leftover pronghorn tag, back when they were giving away 72,000 tags, not the case anymore. Another Matt. I'm getting more into photography and was wondering what kind of mount do you use while hiking and you hook your camera to on your pack and shoulder straps. Called a cotton carrier, right, Jonathan? Yeah. So that's what you use. The cotton carrier hooks on your strap, and then there's like a little slot with an adapter at the base of your camera. Slide it in there and it just stays right there. I got that right? And you give me a thumbs up. We'll go with that. All right, a lot of Wyoming questions. That's interesting. Johnny asks this, Randy, I've always wondered how you and the Fresh Tracks group hunt some of these states that require a resident or a guide when being a non-resident. I never see guides or anyone different in any of your films when you hunt there. I'm specifically referring to Wyoming. Was just curious if there's a different way that I could do it as well. Well, we've never hunted a wilderness area in Wyoming. You need a guide or a resident companion if you hunt a designated wilderness area. And that's not just Forest Service. What that means is any area that is considered a designated wilderness area under the Wilderness Act of 1964. And we've never hunted any of those in Wyoming, so that's why you've never seen us do it. And I don't know of any other way around it. Joe from New York City says, regular IRA or Roth IRA? It depends on what your tax bracket is. It depends on how aggressive you're going to invest. Depends on how old you are. Depends on a whole lot of things. My default is most people probably do a Roth IRA. Pay your taxes now and have all that tax-free growth down the road. I am Will Galton has this. What is a surefire way to get Uncle Sam to pay for my Alaska mountain goat hunt? I don't know. I'd say call your congressman and see if they can help you out on that. I don't know any surefire way to do that, because if you're a non-resident, you're going to be hiring a guide. You're probably going to be subject to a draw in a lot of the places. So I wish I had an answer to that. Mike Stewart has this one. Do you have a maximum weight limit on your Mystery Ranch pack that you won't exceed for a day hunt? What is too heavy for you? I don't, my pack doesn't have a maximum weight limit, but I do. My Mystery Ranch pack can carry way more than I ever want to carry. My daily pack, when you pick it up, when I leave the trailhead, probably weighs between 25 and 30 pounds. I try not to have any pack loads that are over 75 pounds. I prefer to keep them under that. I've done the old heavy stuff. It's just really hard on my body, and the recovery time is long. Now, my Mystery Ranch packs could carry way more than that comfortably if I could do it. That's interesting how much Wyoming interest there is here. Todd asks, Randy, with 13 points, what unit in Wyoming is the best for elk? Well, I'd have to ask you, do you like grizzly bears or not like grizzly bears? In other words, are you comfortable hunting where there's grizzly bears, or are you like, no way? Better yet, which is the best elk unit to go for? Again, it depends on, are you thinking archery? Are you thinking rifle? What's your calendar allow? The easy way, if you're a member of Go Hunt, that'll show it to you really easily in their filtering 2.0. Or if you want to go to Wyoming, on their website, there will be a PDF that shows all of last year's draw reports. And you can pretty much get an idea of which are considered higher quality units with lots of public land, because those are the ones that will take 13 points. And the ones that only take 1 or 2 points, guess what? There's probably either a lower population of elk or there's a serious access problem. It's not that hard to figure out which ones are there or are on that, that scale you're looking for. Chase, how you doing, buddy? If someone was planning to do a hunt in Colorado with 4 to 5 preference points in 2 years, is it, due to point creep, better to hunt now with 2 points? Chase, I hunt as soon as I think I have enough points for the unit I'm interested in. I am not one of those point accumulators if I can help it. Now, like Nevada bighorn sheep or desert bighorn, I keep trying to have them take my points, but they won't. So I end up with a lot of points there. But like Colorado, I got 2 deer points. I don't ever see me having more than 4 deer points in Colorado. I don't ever see me having more than 4 elk points in Colorado. I go as often as I can. If you could draw the tag you want this year with 2 points, go. Oh, let's see, Jeff, this is a tax question. Do you think I should max out my HSA contributions before I make contributions to my Roth IRA? Depends on what your tax bracket is. Depends on what you incur for out-of-pocket medical expenses. HSA is a health savings account. As a general rule, yes, you want to maximize your HSA. But that also depends on, do you have much saved for retirement? What age are you? If you really have to start plowing money away for retirement savings, then the answer might be no, do the Roth first. But from a tax savings perspective, do the HSA first. Bank Michael says, where should I look for elk in November from the 13th to the 30th? They're in sanctuary mode at that point. Look at least a mile from any motorized trail. Look at wherever in the transition range. So you got summer range, winter range, the stuff in between is the transition range. That transition range is where the elk are going to be in November. Now, if it's a really mild year, they're going to be up higher in the transition range. If it's a really cold and wintry year, they're going to be lower in the transition range. And wherever you find the cows, know that the mature bulls on public land are going to be even higher up than that. So if you're seeing a ton of cows, look a little higher. Rick asks, what is your personal favorite go-to cartridge for Western states? I think we demonstrated that last year. Everything I took last year, a moose, a mountain goat, a pronghorn, and many species in the past has been with my 7mm 08. I'm always shooting Nosler 140 grain. It's just, is it going to be the E-tip or is it going to be the Accubon? And I have 3 7mm 08s. 2 of them love the E-tip a little more than the others, and 1 of them loves Accubons a little more than the others. So if you wanted to go to the 30 caliber, I'm a big fan of the 308. But I have some 300 Win mags, and you've seen me shoot that also. So the answer to me is whatever cartridge I shoot the best with the bullets that perform the best. Kind of generic, I know, but it's a good rule of thumb. All right. Jay Conti says, you always say never charge on a credit card to go hunting or fishing, but you also say you'll run out of health before you run out of money, so go hunting. Yep, I say both those things, and they're not contradictory. What statement is more important, and if it's the latter, wouldn't it make sense to pay interest on a hunt now that you might not be, pay interest on a hunt now that you might not be able to do later? No. You don't go into debt and pay interest for personal things. You go into debt and you pay interest on some very basic things. Either a house, because you need a roof over your head, or business or other investment assets like buildings or whatever. It has to be paying you a return on your investment. Personal debt, it's more important to stay out of credit card debt than it is to go hunting, because the odds are you can adjust the other parts of your household budget that would free up the cash flow to go on some of the hunts or to save towards some of those hunts. Margaret asks, hi Randy, what's your favorite way to cook grouse? Well, someday this is probably going to get released to the public, but my wife and I have this world's best but least known rub that we put on rough grouse. And then you just really simply cook it in extra virgin olive oil. It's that simple. I don't like breading things, you know, like some people flour and da-da-da. Then you just end up feeling it's a breading delivery vehicle at that point. I want to feel the flavors and the tastes of that grouse. So a rub does a better job of that. David asks, is the .22 long rifle legal for grouse in Montana? Yes. If so, why don't you carry one in the pickup? Usually because I got so much other junk in there that I'm going to bring my bow. They are in Idaho, and I like to head shoot them. Okay? Just don't like to pick shot out of them. I get that. And P.S., I use CB caps, not much noise. No, you can do that in Montana. You can do that in a lot of states. But for me, I usually have my 20 gauge. If I'm not archery hunting, if I am archery hunting, I just use a broadhead or, game point, small game point. All right, Mr. DMAC, is there any way to use hunting gear as a tax write-off when you don't run a hunting business? Nope. Joseph asks, favorite broadhead for grouse? Oh, kind of like the other question. While elk hunting or otherwise. I use a judo point, and then also, I'm trying to remember who makes it. They make a small game tip. It kind of looks like a claw. I should know who it is. I think it might be G5 or Montec or somebody. Paul says, have you changed your opinion on corner crossing, or do you still feel that it's trespassing and you're okay with landowners keeping you from accessing your public land? Well, I've never been okay with landowners keeping the public off public land. So let's just get that cleared up right away. I can't say that my opinion was ever formed one way or the other. I haven't done corner crossing because, one, my concern that what if this is trespass? I don't want to be trespassing. So if you've listened to our 2 podcasts about corner crossing, you'll see how complicated the topic is. You'll see where it's going. You'll see the work that we're doing on it. And we're going to have a 3rd podcast pretty soon. But I will say this. My understanding of it is changing just like it has my whole life. As I learn more and learn more, my understanding of it has changed, especially in the last 6-8 months since I've hired attorneys to advise me on it. It's not as cut and dried as people would have wanted to make it or try to make it. It's very gray. I'm hoping that over the course of the next few years, we can sort out that gray area and determine if it's trespassing or not trespassing. BB asked the same question as someone else had. What is the best way to get involved in the hunting community if you have no connection? Oh, this is slightly different. So if you don't have any connections to the hunting community, there's a lot of organizations out there that are hunting organizations. And there's state chapters, there's local chapters. So depending on what type of hunting you're thinking about, like I'm involved in the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's local chapter here in Bozeman, Montana. Everybody on that chapter or on that committee is a pretty fanatic hunter. And if you come and join us, you're going to get to know some of those people. You're probably going to get some invites. You're going to get to talk to them every week for an hour or two and talk hunting. And so that's one way to do it. You might have a shooting range. You might have a local fishing club. You might have all kinds of stuff where people are into hunting and fishing. And I used RMEF as an example. There's local chapters for Ducks Unlimited, for Wild Turkey Federation, for Mule Deer Foundation. These type of groups attract a lot of hunters, and they're a good place to make some connections. Romley says, I'm married, filing jointly. How can one hide their tax returns from their spouse to pursue elk in the fall? Well, if you do that, you're probably not going to be filing jointly for very much longer. You're probably going to be filing single. I wouldn't try to hide that. I think that that's a really good question on a April Fool's Day, because he put a smiley face on there, like tongue in cheek. But if you're married, most often you're going to benefit from filing married and joint instead of married and separate. There's a big reason. If you go through the tax code, there's a lot of penalties for filing married and separate. So if you're married, plan on filing jointly most instances. And it's based on what was your status on the last day of the tax year. If you get married on December 31st, it's deemed as though you're married all year. Scott asks, as a non-resident, what can I do to help change the course that Western states seem to be on these days? In other words, reduction in tags and much higher license and tag fees, as well as other actions impacting the do-it-yourself non-resident. That's a really good question, Scott. I don't know that I really have an answer to that, because here's why. The North American model, as it's evolved in the United States, the principles that support it, says that this is a state-based resource. And so whatever state I want to hunt as a non-resident, I'm at the luxury or pleasure of whatever those residents allow for me, both in terms of cost, in terms of allocation of tags. Like in Wyoming, restrictions, I can't hunt wilderness areas. Alaska, I got to use a guide for certain species. You know, the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution says that any rights not specifically granted to the federal government shall be retained by the states. And the right in wildlife was never granted to the federal government, so it's retained by the states. So what happens? The local legislator or the governor, he's more concerned about what the residents are going to say than what the non-residents are going to say, because that's who votes for him. I say that every state should put their residents as the number one priority. And I know that that means less opportunity for me when I try to hunt in Wyoming or Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, wherever it is I go. It's just how it is. And I don't see it getting any easier. And here's part of the pressures that are creating that is we're losing a lot of access in some of these western states as private lands get bought. You know, the old rancher who used to let you hunt there, along comes a new out-of-state wealthy guy, no trespassing. So a lot of those people get displaced. Some of our herds, you know, I talked about how Wyoming pronghorn numbers are going down. Wyoming mule deer numbers are going down. Colorado mule deer numbers are going down. Nevada mule numbers are going down. So there's less resource out there. And once the resource is less, even if it is 10%, 10% of 90 is a lot less than 10% of 1,000. The thing I always say is, instead of fighting and arguing over a shrinking pie, do the things, join the groups, donate to the cause, whether it's your time, your money, your talent, your treasure, whatever. Donate to making the wildlife resource more abundant, because the more abundant it is, the more opportunity for hunting. The greater the opportunity for hunting, 10%, you know, to non-residents or whatever the percentage is, of a bigger number is more beneficial to us. And I know that might not be the answer a lot of people want to hear, but that's kind of the reality we're faced with the dynamics. And the other thing you're seeing Western state populations are growing like crazy. Idaho, Colorado, Montana, Utah. As the populations grow like crazy, the demand for resident opportunity gets higher and higher and higher. So some of the things you're seeing are probably not going to go away. If anything, they might accelerate. So for me, that says we got to do even more work and a better job on access and on conservation of species. Caitlin asks, Randy, you got any tips or advice for a married couple who hunts together and who are also hyper-competitive? Ooh, that's always a tough one. In how to make the best out of your hunt, specifically elk hunting, and how to strategize the shooter-caller scenario so that both can be successful. Also keep doing these because I love your AMA sections. So Caitlin, you need to treat your spouse hunting partner the same as if it was a non-spouse hunting partner. I don't care if it's paper, scissors, rock, flip the coin, whatever. You figure out a process of who gets to call, who gets to shoot. And you sort that out, because two hyper-competitive people, boy, that's going to have some challenges. So just think of your spouse as your hunting partner, as if it was a non-spouse. And how would you treat that person? How much respect and deference would you give to them? So this one is going to open up a can of worms, Jack. So just know we're recording this on April Fool's Day. So some of this might just be for humor and some of it might be because Randy's got a bug in his butt. It seems like most hunters are conservative and right-leaning folks who believe in capitalism. Yes, I would say as a general statement, hunters, when they're polled, the polling always shows hunters are right of center. So with the recent outfitter tag issue in Montana, and with a guide mandatory wilderness hunting in Wyoming, and rumors of outfitter tags and the 90-10 change in Wyoming, why are these states essentially subsidizing the outfitters? In a free market, if the outfitter is that good for their dollars spent, I would choose that as a non-resident, right? If not, the costs are too high and the market is oversaturated, and as a result, we have subsidy. Jack? Sounds like you've looked at it pretty well. I'm not here to defend any of that. I don't think a wildlife resource that is held in trust for the public should be allocated to support someone's business model. So I agree with you. And yeah, that's happening. When you say hunters are right of center, it doesn't mean that hunters are agreeing with this. In fact, I'd say most of my audience disagrees with it, just like I do. It's like, you know what? All of us should be in the same pool for the same drawing under the same terms. But that's not how it happens a lot of times. So that's why we have to spend our time engaged in the policy issues. So Brad says, I notice in a lot of hunting videos, Destination Elk, version 4 included, Destination Elk is the Elk 101 YouTube channel that my buddy Corey Jacobson produces, that you guys are sitting around a campfire at night, still in your hunting clothes. Yeah, at times. Are you changing clothes each day, or is a little campfire smoke not that big of a deal when it comes to scent control? A little campfire smoke is not that big of a deal. I don't believe you can eliminate scent and always have to play the wind. Agree. But I would still want to minimize scent in any way possible. If you think about the fact that many years, in the last 10 years, forests have actually been closed because of fires and smoke and everything else. A little bit of smoke that they smell from our campfires is minuscule compared to what they're accustomed to out on the landscape. And here's the real problem. If they get where they could smell that little bit of smoke on our clothing, they're going to smell us for sure. They're going to smell everything about us, our breath, our body odor, our whatever. So I'm with you, Brad. Play the wind. Never let yourself get where your scent cone's going this way. Never put yourself in a position where that goes towards the animal. And it doesn't really matter. Oh, there's another corner crossing one. Brian says, no question for you, but I wanted to tell you that I think it was a great job that you did on the corner crossing series of podcasts. I'm fascinated by the case going on and all the details that you and the attorney discussed. Thanks, Brian. I've been fortunate to own several properties over the years, and I can't understand how a landowner would be upset about someone stepping over a corner while they are on public land, going to public land, especially when they are legally allowed to be on that public land. It's insanity. Brian, I'm there with you, man. I respect private property rights. I mean, it's one of my highest concerns, but I still don't understand that. And maybe it's a situational thing or a generational thing. Me and my brother and my sister inherited the land that our family owns along a river in Minnesota. And my dad, all the time, let anybody who wanted go down there and fish. And I think if we ever posted that as no trespassing, that would be the reason why he would come out of his grave and kick our collective butts. If ever we restricted the right of people to use that property for fishing. So I come from this mindset of, you know what, no harm, no foul, go ahead. I'm blessed to own this property. If you can get some enjoyment out of it, I get it. Now, we also know that there's a lot of jerks out there that don't behave well, don't respect private property. They litter, they tear down fences, they tear up roads. So we got to take some of that onto ourselves. But I'm with you. I don't understand what the big yank is, why someone wants to block that, but some people do. But I want to also give the reminder that in these corners, there's a lot of landowners who aren't blocking it. In fact, a lot of them say, hey, I got a gate right there near the corner. Just go through the gate. Make sure you close it. But, you know, don't be climbing over that fence and hurting yourself. Go through this gate over here. Just go hunt that BLM. Go hunt that Forest Service. So there's a ton of really good landowners that we run the risk of running them to the other side or pushing them to the other side when we lump them all together. So I'm with you, Brian. G. Culpep. How long does it take for you to get TV film permits to film hunts on public lands? In which states do you find are the best to work with? Well, these film permits we mostly get from federal agencies, the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or the U.S. Forest Service. Some states we have to get them, but very, very few. So how long does it take to get those film permits? It depends on how busy they are. When they're in fire season, don't try to get a film permit in August when every person in the Forest Service and BLM is fighting fires. Usually we can get them turned around in 3 months, 2 to 3 months. Yeah, we got to get them. But the rules are really strange. The rules aren't always consistent, and the compliance rate in the outdoor space, the number of hunting TV platforms that get film permits is a very small percentage. We do it for a couple of reasons. One, I'm using a public resource. I should have to pay a fee, right? Just like if I went and used someone's private land, I would lease it from them. So I should pay a fee. Two, I'm the public land guy. I advocate on behalf of public lands. I don't want to be the guy who's not following the rules. I just write it at, this is the cost of doing business. If I can't afford to pay that film permit fee, I probably am in the wrong business. Robert says, you brought up in a video in the past that Wyoming has one of the best ways to turn around tags for pronghorn. I believe that's what you said. Well, with this new 90-10 bill most likely coming through the pipeline, so just let's make sure we understand. Right now, deer, elk, and antelope are still the old system. It's only bison, grizzly bear, moose, goat, and sheep that are subject to the new 90-10 rule. In Wyoming. What's your thought on point creep happening in Wyoming in your strategy to hunt there going forward? It doesn't change my thoughts on point creep, and it doesn't change my strategy. Point creep has always been these people over here on the side buying points, buying points, buying points. And so many hunters have been ignoring that. They only look at last year's draw odds. Well, the draw odds are only the people who actually applied for a tag, not these people over here buying points. Well, we've seen this point pile getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the number of points all these point buyers have is getting higher and higher and higher. Well, I knew sooner or later these people were going to jump in and start burning those points. I fully expected point creep. Doesn't change my strategy. My strategy has always been, as quick as I have what I think are enough points, I'm going. I'm burning them. So I'm not a big accumulator of points, so it doesn't change my strategy at all. If it does go to 90-10, yeah, it's going to get harder to draw. But it is what it is. Kevin says, can you write off a tactical 6.5 with a suppressor for a home office security system? No, I don't think so, Kevin. You'll want to go read all those tax court cases about firearms and other stuff where there's a significant portion of personal pleasure. And a home security system in itself is not deductible. An office security system is, but so that'd be a pretty long stretch. Taryn asks, what's the dream hunt that you haven't been on yet? It's not so much for a species as it is a location. The McKenzie Mountains in Northwest Territories and the Brooks Range of Alaska. I want to go back to the Sheldon Antelope Range in Nevada someday. I did that hunt once. I mean, as far as species, I've never drawn a bighorn sheeptag or a desert bighorn sheeptag. So yeah, those are dream hunts, but I've got gunny sacks full of points in many states for that. But I'm not standing by my computer waiting for the odds or the results to come back and say, successful, Randy drew a sheeptag. No, the odds are I'm going to my grave without ever drawing a sheeptag, but I'm okay with that. Caden Schlegel, I own the Metcalf Mystery Ranch pack, which I love. However, I feel like it's overkill for hunting all day just to return to camp that night. Okay. I'm considering getting either the pop-up 28 or 38 so I have a more compact pack to hunt with all day. And the pop-up frame lets me pack out my first load of meat to camp where I can grab my Metcalf to continue the pack out. Thoughts? I have all of those packs. And that's a good strategy. And if you're going to buy one of those, go to the Go Hunt Gear Shop and use promo code Randy and get 10% off your Mystery Ranch pack. Back to the person who said, how do we not pay full retail? But no, that's a good strategy. I figured out how to make my Metcalf compress down so light that I almost don't even know it's there. And it's easier to mount my rifle and my spotter and my tripod too for packing around. So, but if you don't carry as much stuff as we do, we carry a lot. The pop-up, I really like my pop-up 38. So that's what I'd do if I was going to go with one of the pop-ups. Tan the Man Hines. Okay, that's an interesting handle. What, if any, superstition or rituals do I perform that you believe will result in a successful hunt? For example, you can't hunt without a lucky hat, or you got to bring your lucky knife or whatever. I don't have any of those. Maybe I should. My wife has all kinds of superstitions when we're fishing. People see me hang antlers in trees, and there's a reason why I do that. And it's not so much superstition or whatever, but there was a guy I grew up with, Peter Rollo. He was an enrolled tribal member of up in northern Minnesota. He and his family lived in our town and went to school with us. And on occasions when I'd go hunting, Peter didn't really hunt, but I'd go out by their house and he'd join me and we'd go, I'd go shoot grouse or whatever. A few times we found shed antlers and Peter would take them and he'd hang them in a tree. And he'd look at me and say, now we're gonna have good luck. We just made an offering, it'll be returned. So if any of you are wondering where my kind of history of hanging antlers in trees came from, it's to my friend who's gone too soon. He and too many of his siblings are gone too soon. Peter Rollo. I found it unique. I was always enamored with indigenous culture, and he was a connection that I had to that. And so I think of that, I think of him, and that's probably my one time if I'm superstitious is when we find an antler, I hang it in a tree and I tell the camera crew, if you guys grab that, you're fired. But really for me, it's, a little bit of thought about Peter and what his beliefs were and his thoughts. And so that's probably as superstitious as I get. All right, Robert asks, so I don't know what I should do about my situation this year on hunting the West. I put in for the non-resident guided hunts in New Mexico. Okay, you got better chances in the guided pool than the self-guided pool. I have a decision change on getting a tag there this year, but I've also got 2 points for pronghorn, elk, and mule deer in Montana. What should I do? If I don't put in for those tags, I lose those points. Do you have any thoughts? Well, Montana has a point purchase period, September through December, I think. So I would do the New Mexico gig, and if you're worried about, cost or schedule or whatever, just buy points in Montana when the point purchase period comes up. So let's see, Michael, this is a very informed question. It's a good one. Randy, have you heard about the Modernizing Access to Public Land Act? In other words, the MAP Land Act. Yes, I have. That passed the U.S. House of Representatives. And he quotes what it says. The MAP Land Act will direct federal land management agencies to digitize and standardize mapping records. Good, about time. This will allow hunters, hikers, bikers, anglers, and millions of other federal land users to access essential information about public lands, as well as help develop federal land management agencies to identify public lands with limited or non-existent public access points and take proactive steps to make them open to the public. Yes, if you enjoy public lands like I do, please contact your elected official and ask them to support the MAP Lands Act. Easy. Thanks for bringing it up. Oh, we only got 4 left. Man, what's with all the Wyoming? This should have been like, ask me anything about Wyoming. Chris says, should I ditch the Wyoming system with 15 preference points for moose and sheep, or hope they adopt a true bonus point system like Montana and Nevada? That's a good question, Chris. You're right there. So, earlier I said I'd bailed at 7 points. Well, if I would have stayed in there right now, I'd be at 22 points. Little did I know how many other people were going to bail. So the change comes along, I think it was 2007. And I'm like, well, I'm so far back in the line that it's going to be 30 years before I catch up, before they plow through all these non-residents ahead of me. Well, had I known that half of the non-residents at that time were going to take the same approach I did and bail, the line got shrunk in half. I'm like, oh, dang, that was stupid. No, if you got the money, you're 15 points into it, hang in there. If you say, you know what, this is already squeezing my budget, maybe you try someplace else. But, 15 points for moose and sheep in Wyoming has you closer to the front of the line than starting over in some other state. Jeff, this is a really good question. Why can we not claim our dogs as dependents on our tax returns? Boy, I wish we could have, because I wish we could have claimed their medical expenses. My wife had this, God bless this little thing. We put her down last January. She's almost 18, Lily, a little cockapoo. We called her the $100,000 dog because there is no expense too great for my wife's pets. My wife cannot distinguish between a pet and a child. So at one time we had 3 dogs, 2 hunting labs and this cockapoo. Our biggest household budget item was custom dog food and custom this and new dog pillow. My wife thought our labs needed a new dog pillow every week. Honey, let them chew them up before we get them a new one. Well, they don't want to sleep on that. Yeah, I mean, if there's such a thing as reincarnation, I want to come back as my wife's dog, not as her husband. I'm with you. I wish that we could write off our dog expenses and our claim them as a dependent, because they're an expensive dependent. Oh well. Darren asks, have you put in for any of the Texas public land hunts? I have not. Neljai is a pretty fun hunt on public land. I bet it probably is. Texas is 2% public land. It has some very competitive, I'll call it, applications for the few public land hunts they have, but I've never applied there. All right, last one, drum roll. I'm American. How did this one get put as the last one? What's the largest animal you think you could defeat with your bare hands? Is this a joke? Did you put this one in here, Jonathan? What the hell kind of question is that? I'm not going to go try to beat any animal with my bare hands. A mosquito, a fly, maybe. I'm sorry, I can't think of anything I would want to try to get with my bare hands, Say it's a little mouse or a rat. They bite you, they got the rabies or something. You end up with the hooboo and the, who knows what else you end up with. No, kind of smart-ass question is that? All right, you guys put that one in there as an April Fool's joke. I know it. Anyhow, folks, that's what we got for today. We'll do another one of these down the road. Appreciate all your questions. Appreciate you watching.